So we're going to unload the kiln today. Pretty satisfied with the firing. For what I can see, we'll be unloading. We'll find out. There's always surprises as you go, so we'll see how that goes. The kiln I'm firing is a Guile fiber kiln, 18 cubic foot kiln, and it fires fairly even from top to bottom and easy to control. The reduction, you'll see some of that as we unload some of the shinos. So let's get started. So you can see the cones. Cone 10's down, which is right where I want it. The bottom's about cone 10 tips, so less than a cone difference between top and bottom. So these little vases are my wife's, Evie, who these are out of porcelain, and then she presses in the slab. She presses different organic material, plants and things, leaves. And this particular glaze is Shino glaze. A Celadon glaze that has. It's actually a Tom Coleman glaze that has 0.5% of black stain in it, so you get this kind of nice teal. Kind of steel blue color. This one is the same base Celadon, but with a different stain. So you have the more traditional green. A leaf. So these are some of the Shino pots that I do. Um, this is a Malcolm Davis recipe with a little more soda ash in it. So normally it's I think 17%, and I added 20%. But what I'm after, what I desire the most are these spottings, rather than just more of a solid carbon trap like that. Um, and where you see the orange, that is actually wax. See it here a little better. That's wax resist painted over the top of the glaze right after I glaze it, as soon as possible after you glaze it. And what that does is it prevents the soda ash from coming out of the on top of the glaze as it dries. And then you'll see this little dark brown line that is actually a black stain painted on. I use handmade brushes for that. But to get the more of the spotting like you see on that side, it's kind of contrary to what most people say. They say, leave your pot out for days in order to get carbon trapping. But I actually glazed this just a few minutes before I loaded it in the kiln, so I waited till the last to do my shinos. So it stayed out maybe no more than 30 minutes. And that's what I found. If you want to get the spotting, if you leave them out too long, you'll get more of a solid black or gray. This one you can see is a lot darker. Again, it's all fired next to each other, but they can be completely different. This one, for example, look how it almost went white. And then the other side is the gray trapping. These are some birds my wife made, and this little quail. We actually made an original out of clay, and then um, did a plaster mold, and then she can press mold them and make as many as she wants. There's several different styles of birds. Here's kind of like a little blue jay cardinal, which this is a crystal matte glaze. Use a lot of this. And this is a blue crystal matte, which is, and yellow crystal matte is a Tom Coleman recipe that I just added some copper and cobalt to give it a blue color. Nice, you can see nice spots there from the crystals, the microcrystals. This is actually a red slip, and just has a clear glaze over the top of it. This is a white shino. It's called Moon Rocks, and you can see it's, instead of orange, it's white, but it will carbon trap. So wherever there's no wax, it'll stay white, but it will go gray where it'll go gray where there's no wax and stay white where there's wax. So more shino. These are shino bowls that I do. Basically the same thing. This is this one you'll see a little bit of spotting on the inside of the bowl. Sometimes you'll even get gray on the inside. So here's a good example of the leopard spotting I'm trying for. It's a elusive thing, and sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. These are interiors are done with the Temuku tea dust, and then the exterior is the shino. And typically you don't get as much carbon trapping because you don't have a shino on the inside, so it's not migrating to the outside from the inside to the outside. So a lot of times there'll be a lighter carbon trapping with a different interior glaze. So all these are porcelain. This is Coleman's porcelain. Pretty much that's all I use for most of the pots. I do have a couple stoneware pieces in here. This particular one is a black slip painted underneath the shino. Same idea with this one, only a red slip. She has some possibilities. First time I've tried these are test pieces. This one is a black slip, just brushwork painted underneath the shino. This one is a stoneware piece, so you can see like a white stoneware, so it's completely different color than on porcelain. There's a pretty little leaf of my wife's. You can see you got a nice variation. So you can see it there. So that's a shino, but the veins of the leaves, there's a stain put on and then rubbed off with a sponge at this stage, and then this outer edge is actually a ash glaze, fake ash. This Hannah's fake ash, which gives you a nice variation. So here's some more leaves my wife made. This is kind of an interesting combination. You can see that it has kind of a mauve color on it. This is actually it's called Killer Blue, but it's just a blue barium glaze. And then if you put Pierce Black, which is a kind of a satin black, it actually turns mauve. And it does that on other glazes too, which is kind of interesting. Celadon, again, the And this is Elaine Coleman, Tom Coleman's recipe, and it's called Elaine's Pooling Celadon. But I added less of the stain in it, so it's a little paler. And then again, the iron stain rubbed into the veins of the leaf. It's a nice one with just a shino. It's like a fall leaf. This is a glaze called $1 Million Yellow. It's another barium glaze and has a nice yellow tone, but this one has the iron stain underneath it, so it's a little more oranger than it would be without. This is again $1 Million Yellow, but with the Piers black around the outside. And see here, it's more of the black color, just darkens it up. So here's a pretty one. This is that steel blue celadon. Again, it has about 5% of black stain in it, or not 5%, 0.5%, about a half a percent. So it's got steel blue, but it's pretty with the iron stain under it. This is the green celadon with the iron stain. Different combos with crystal matte. You can see, you can get these really pretty, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but some greens and oranges and reds. So these are some textured mugs that I make. This is actually done with, I did a bisque mold, so I just pressed an actual board, old barnwood, into wet clay, and then I bisque fired it. And then what I do is I throw a piece, and then I actually cut it off when it's on the wheel. I cut the sides off, leaving the bottom, and then I press them in the texture, and then put them back together, and then of course add the handle later. This is just the porcelain with just a black stain with no glaze over it, just the stain. Same idea, only this one I actually carved kind of a quaking aspen kind of a look into, and these are flat. The texture bisque molds are actually a flat piece of clay, so when I cut them I can roll them out. This is one I carved, again, kind of a dogwood blossom. This is just iron stain, and it's a little more brown, a little lighter. Celadon interior on this one. This is one that's kind of fun. I just this is brand new. I just did this one as a test, but I made the bisque mold I made was actually pressed in seed pods and different plant material, yarrow, different things, poppy, and then this one is actually a slab built mug. So I pressed a slab in it, made it round over a cardboard disc, and then I actually threw the bottom and then added it on top. And the bottom and the interiors are the leach temaku. So these are some more crystal mattes. This is again Tom Coleman's recipe, a yellow crystal matte, and then this actually is a blue crystal matte. And then right in here is a little strip of the steel blue celadon, which is what the interior is, and the bottom. This combination, which is actually Stephen Hill's version, this is Yellow Crystal Magic Warm, with a little Piers black on the bottom, and you can see where it's thinner, it goes green. And then on the top, where the Timaku is, you can see that, you can see it on this side a little better. It kind of runs down these grooves. This is just a slip, porcelain slip I put on after I trim, and then I just comb through a different texture. The same idea with this, just different ribs that have different textures on them. So when you draw it through the wet slip, you get different patterning. I like it when it runs. That's kind of what I want it to do. Kind of goes down those textures. This is another version, and this is yellow crystal matte. And you can see the trailing of the green celadon on this. This actually was a test piece. This has different slips. Actually, Amy Klein sells slips that are in spray cans, just like aerosol cans. And I just sprayed like 3 different colors, like a red, a green, and I think a purple. And just to see if it'd show through the yellow crystal matte. Kind of has a nice subtle color. I like that. This is that same texture, the dogwood impression that I put on, but this one has the yellow crystal matte glaze over the top of it. I put the brown stain, wiped it off, then put the glaze on top of that. You can see it. I got nice crystals forming on that. And this is the first time I've glazed. Usually I just leave them unglazed, so this is a trial. I like it. Same idea, only using the blue crystal, and you can see really how it kind of runs, creates these fun things. You know, I like that. It's just kind of happens. You never know how much it's going to run. Oh, and by the way, I always use on the bottom, I use what I call a stopper glaze, because these are running glazes, and all of these are sprayed, because I'm putting 4 or 5 glazes on some of these, and you could never dip them. They would just all be way too thick and run off. So I put a stopper glaze on the bottom, so if they do run and run into that more stable glaze, and it'll slow it down. I won't have problems. If you glaze all the way to the bottom with some of these glazes, you got a real chance of them running and then breaking off your foot, just puddling up on the bottom. So some more serving kind of bowls, larger bowls. You can see it. You can see on here the little crystals, microcrystals. What I like sometimes, if you can get like this green glaze, you get these little crystals forming. Float, kind of looks like they're floating in the color. You can see kind of a mauve kind of color there with a light celadon interior. This one you can see the crystals forming nicely on that one. Black slip decoration, Timaku inside and on the bottom. This is the bottom shelf, so this is about a half a cone off from the top, so cone 10 is just tipped. So this glaze actually likes to be a little cooler firing, so I always put the crystals mats towards the bottom, because they'll actually work fine. So this is the blue crystal mat. It has the copper and cobalt in it, and you see this kind of pretty mauve color floating here. This is that Pierce black that actually goes mauve when it's thin on this particular glaze. Another example of the $1 Million Yellow. You can see by itself it's this kind of pretty matte yellow. So here's the cones you can see. That's cone 10 there on the bottom shelf. So just some bottle forms. This is that blue crystal matte with the teal, the steel blue celadon. And then this is a Pierce black, and it actually goes a dark blue if you put it on kind of a little thicker, and thinner is more of the mauve color. So another bottle with the blue crystal. You can see the crystals nicely in this one, the micro crystals. And with that Piers, you can see there, you can see the mauve, which I like it when you have the crystals floating in that color. And then it actually, if it's even a little thicker, it'll go green. So it'll go blue to green to mauve, all these different combinations. I always like to put a test of copper red as the Vegas red, another Coleman glaze, just to see how the reduction is more than anything. So that's not bad. Getting fairly good reds, a little white, so it might mean it had a little bit too high of reduction for a red. So here's what happens when you have shino failures. No carbon trapping whatsoever. Same shinos that I was using on all those other ones. So yeah, you always get a few of these. Sometimes you get a whole kiln load of these. So some larger vases, again with the comb slip decoration. This is actually a stoneware with the porcelain slip put on top thickly, and then ribbed with different textured ribs. Probably about 5 or 6 glazes on here. Other vase, this particular one just used a rib in the wet slip, so you have a little different pattern. Again, several different glazes. This area that's running here, that actually is an ash glaze, blue Hannah's ash, so it runs a little more. This one has a little bird knob on the lid. That kind of pumpkin color actually comes from another black called spotted black. So it's always interesting to me that black glazes put on different thicknesses change completely depending on what glaze is underneath it. So some different bowls. These are the crystal matte. Now this one's the Stephen Hill Yellow Crystal Magic Warm, again with several different sprayed versions. Pierce black on the bottom, and where they overlap you get that nice green color. But again, combs slip. But I really like it when you get this Temaku, which is only dipped to here, but it travels all the way down these textured areas, which is kind of what I like. I usually don't get this mottled interior. I like it when it's more consistently one color, but probably just the way I dipped or poured it. So here's another version. This is, again, this one is the Tom Coleman version, Yellow Crystal Matte, the Blue Crystal Matte, but you can see the celadon, the green celadon travels instead of the Temaku on the other one, travels down. I like that. And you can even, you can see it on that one, you even get these interesting kind of purple colors. I actually use a glaze, a watercolor blue on this one, that, or actually I think watercolor green, which is actually a glaze that's over fired. It's probably like a cone 6 glaze, and it makes it travel even more. So you can really see it on this one. And different mugs. This one, again, that kind of pumpkin color was the spotted black over the crystal. So more of Evie's birds, and this is kind of an interesting, you can see this kind of pink blush. That is actually that killer blue, which is normally this kind of blue color, but because it has copper, and actually the blue is not, doesn't have any cobalt, it's just copper barium glaze, which gives you this nice deep bright blue. But you can see here the reduction, you got a little, the copper went to a blush to a pink. Same kind of deal here. Only this is on a textured bird, so she makes her slabs textured, and then when she's pressing them in, you get these nice different pieces of textures kind of put together, which I really like. There's a nice one with the yellow crystal matte with the iron rubbed into the textures. The steel blue celadon. $1 Million Yellow. Where it's thin, if you get it on thin, it'll actually go brown. So it kind of likes to be a little thicker if you want the yellow. So just a few more pots here at the bottom of the kiln, back row. And this is that textured pattern I did, but this has the $1 Million Yellow over it. This is, again, first time, just a test piece, but I kind of like that. Shows up the texture, but a little more subtle. These are, I just call them fruit bowls, just bowls with cutout areas. And this is the crystal mats, again with the piers, that nice. You can see on this one, it's just a nice satin black, but where it's overlapped with the yellow, it can go green and even that mauve color. This one's a green celadon version, so instead of the piers black, it has a celadon. So this is actually a little piece that's done with a kind of an oil spot metallic type glaze. I mix all my glazes with the exception of this one. This is actually an Amy Klein glaze, so you can buy pre-mixed glazes, and she'll ship them to you. She has all kinds of different colors. Another tumbler. This side is, you can see it has quite a bit different color, a different glaze put on it. And then what I do is after I trim them, I just put them on a little cup, and then I paint the slip on from here down, and I just comb through it with different textured ribs, so I can get these variations in the glaze, which is kind of what I'm after. So overall, pretty pleased with the firing. Let's see if we can do a little pan here of what we got going. Always nice when you get the lid off. Came right off. Little trick is I just put some aluminum in my wax and paint it on, and that way they usually pop right off.